Welcome to day 31 of reading every single day for the rest of my life for 30 minutes. If you have been with me since day one, thank you. This will be a journey of a lifetime. Day 30. Whatever it takes. Let's get started. We're at page. I'll stop the dramatic ass music. Oh my god. That was so cringy, but I don't give a fuck. I'm at page 33. And yeah, let's get it started. I'm super excited. Let's get it started. Page 33. I'm reading today's book is The Alien Perspective. Welcome to day 31 of reading every single day. I already said that. A New View of the Humanity and the Cosmos by David Whitehouse. Let's get it. All right. I wonder how many worlds there could be like Europa. Oh, I didn't show you guys the time here. Boom. Let's get it. I wonder how many worlds there could be like Europa and Enceladus and other planetary systems that have developed life only for it to remain trapped in a cage of ice. We know from whales and dolphins that intelligence can develop in an aquatic form environment, albeit not our kind of intelligence, but could technology? Could a water-based species build machines? Are the creatures and philosophies of under ice or water worlds to remain isolated with their just with just their chemical sonar or luminous abilities to exchange forlorn messages? We are beginning to develop the machines we will send to Europa in the next decade to drill through its ice shield. When it breaks through the basal ice into that sealed and dark universe, I wonder if it's a microphone. If its microphone will pick up the clicks and chirps, a fug of the unseen creatures. I wonder if I will ever get to hear the songs of Europa. Dang. I hope I do. I hope in my life. I think we are. I think we're going to find life on Europa. Praying. Maybe Mars. Europa. Definitely the ice planets. Told in this museum are the stories of billions of years of accidents and many restarts of creatures gone forever, which is most of life that ever existed, and the tales of the new survivors, in the tales of few survivors. It gives us some idea about what we could find on our other planets around other stars, but let's not us pretend it will provide the full picture. As we shall see, we cannot define life, we can only describe it, and even then we can only describe it incompletely. On other worlds, things might have started like they did on our world, but taken a different course. Or they may have been different from the start, or not even tethered to a planet at all. To enterprise of life, its adaptability and resilience raise the status of the Earth to cosmic significance. And among those life forms reside modern humans who dominate their planet. For now, they will hopefully continue to exist as long as it is habitable. Yet, according to the biologist Stephen Jay Gould, writing in 1989, we came very close, thousands and thousands of times, to erasure by the veering of history down another sensible channel. Replay the tape a million times. He said, I doubt that anything like Homo sapiens would ever evolve again. We are truly something our planet has never seen before. As you look at the museum map and plan your tour through life, you realize that you're not an endpoint of life any more than any other current living species represents an endpoint. They all have billions of years of evolution behind them. Each individual can trace its lineage back to its ancestors and to the species it's evolved from, and on past the Archean to Earth's first living thing. But as life evolved and branched out, most of Earth's experiments hit a dead end. If you were able to put all the species that ever existed in a timeline, that you would see most of them are no longer here, meaning that we, and much of the life we see around us, are but the youngest leaves on the tree of life. Although the variety of species is much greater now than it was early on, the vast majority are still the simplest forms. From one viewpoint, there has been no succession of life forms on Earth. The primitive bacteria are still with us. Indeed, they are the most prolific in the ecosystem that of any of the higher organisms. Some biologists have suggested that the Earth is still in the bacterial age, with more complex organisms being ecologically unimportant. It has been calculated that the virus in the seas outweigh the whales by at least 20 times. Whales themselves have been around for only about 30 million years or so, though there were reptiles nearly as big, ankylosaurs and plesiosaurs, which lived from 150 million years until 65 million years ago. Before 300 million years ago, there were nothing nearly as big as the ichthyosaur. 500 million years ago, there was little animal life on land. Some plants, but no trees. There is a section in the museum about soils, an often overlooked but vital component of Earth's biome. They are a specialized ecosystem for degrading woody plant material, which back in time allowed the diversification of plants, of land plants, with fungi forming symbiotic relationships with mycorrhizae on tree roots to help them absorb minerals. The recycling of plant material was one of the most important steps in the evolution of life. Now a hologram forms above you on a tiny worm-like creature, the first ancestor on the family tree that contains the most familiar animals today, including ourselves, Icaria wuricea, 555 million years ago and only 6 meters long, is the earliest Bilaterian, an organism with a front and back, two symmetrical sides and openings at either end connected by a gut. Therefore, Wuertschia were most likely radically symmetrical large creatures. But this organism was a cellular experiment, and the invention of the anus was a great advance. It passed through gut instead of a simple sac. This evolution had immense ecological consequences because the accumulation of feces on shallow sea floors promoted a new ecology of filter feeders, along with their associated predators. New forms of life became possible because of the invention of the anus. Subsequently, in only a few tens of billions of years, there occurred the origins of the major kind of cellular animals we have now. Until the 1950s, most scientists believed that complex life began around 540 million years ago in what is called the Cambrian explosion. This was because there was almost no earlier fossils that had been discovered, and almost all the basic categories of animals alive today can be found in the fossils of 540 and 490 million years ago. However, newer research shows that something significant happened earlier that could have set the evolution of life running on a different course. The reason it didn't is one of the lessons of the universe and something we should pay attention to as we consider life in space. The period between 635 and 450 million years ago is known as the Ediacaran period, named after the Australian hills where its fossils were first discovered, and it has become one of the most fascinating periods in the evolution of life on Earth. Ediacaran animals do not seem to have shells, which is one reason why their fossils are so rare. What's more, their structure appears different from animals from the Cambrian period. About half the creatures have anatomies that were never seen again. The variety extended the range of body plans beyond anything we have today. These alien designs show that different forms and different ways of life are possible on Earth, and that we have today a fraction of what Earth's biology has been. These creatures once seemed to point at one possible future for life on Earth, but why were they suddenly wiped out? Perhaps they initially had no predators and never learned to fight, so they were easy prey for subsequent predators. Their peaceful world had no future, a lesson for us as we consider life in space. The ways of life portrayed in the Museum of Life on Earth are many ways and varied, and obviously paid no regard for human prejudices. Xenopus is a frog that uses his own tadpoles as a food source. On the other hand, Alaskan salmon die after mating and laying eggs, and the smell from their decaying carcasses prompt midges to lay eggs on the water surface, with the resulting bacterial bloom serving as food for the hatching salmon. Humans are not the only creatures represented at the museum's Dome of Intelligence. Studying dolphins alters any assumptions that we are the sole purporters of intelligence on Earth. Humans have large brains, but certainly not the largest on the planet. Whales and elephants have brains up to 6 times larger, but they have also bigger bodies. Maybe the secret to greater intelligence isn't just a large brain, but the density of neurons within it. More penetrative studies have examined the number of neurons in the brains of different species and the amount of connections between those neurons that adapt processing power. A human brain weighs about 1,300 grams and contains about 90 million neurons. Curiously, our brains have shrunk over the past 3,000 years, in which our species have experienced its greatest development. Dolphins separated from the evolutionary line of land-based mammals about 60-70 million years ago when their ancestors, small wolf-like animals, crept back into the sea. Wow. I did not know that. Dolphins separated from like the evolutionary line, land-based animals 67 million years ago when like their wolf like ancestors went back in the water. What? I wonder what they look like. Like that would be insane. Wow. Crept back into the sea. They actually had big brains for longer than humans. They understand symbolism, gestures that might mean the red or blue ball, and syntax. The idea that changing the order of words can alter their meaning. They appreciate their own individuality and have names that run in families. Studying them is the nearest thing we have to contact with alien intelligence. The next display takes you from the world of animals into something completely human in a way that is surprising many visitors. What you see is not life form, but something closely associated with one particular form of life. It's a rainbow. Rainbows are not made of just sunlight refracted and reflected by raindrops acting as tiny prisms. What nature does is to fan out sunlight into its component wavelengths. The droplets do not produce color. That is made inside our brains. It is particularly made part of the human brain that overlays the world with color. Long before we were human, we lived in the forest canopy and only occasionally came down to the ground. Our world was one of green shapes and dampened sunlight. Our high-quality color vision may have been evolved in our wide-eyed primate ancestors as an aid to finding fruits in the predominantly green environment, and also to see camouflage predators as subtle changes in the tiny tints of background colors. We were then much more so than most of us are today, as integrated part of ecology. We evolve and to rely on the behavior of some animals and the properties of some plants, and then they turn around to depend on us. And then came to depend on us. The rainbow is a result of such evolutionary interdependence. Consider rainbows from the perspective of plants. Of course, they cannot see a rainbow in the late afternoon arched over dripping, verdant tropical forests or hung over the plains of the Serengeti over a passing shower. Yet somehow they know it is there because it is as much their creation as it is the sunbeam of the raindrop. Our improved color vision was in a way driven by fruiting trees and bushes. Evolution used it to propagate the plants so that we could see, pluck, and eat their fruits and scatter their seeds. Thus the rainbow had been with us as long as we have been human. Many that is arbitrary and wonderful, patriarchal to earth and yet universal, has come together to make rainbows, yet they are not here by accident. In a way, it is true. It is the true banner of humanity. No other creature in the universe sees a rainbow the way humans do. Other intelligences out in space will see their own rainbows, but they will be theirs. They cannot experience the human rainbows. It is ours alone, the true flag of the planet Earth and humanity, and it flies above the Museum of Life on Earth. As you consider taking your leave on the museum, the display changes one last time, and you see lazy waves lapping the white sand at the edge of a blue sea somewhere in the tropics 360 million years ago. It's obvious that this is a very different Earth from today. Forces operating from deep within the planet's interior resulted in all the land becoming concentrated in one region. As the dispersed continental masses of earlier geological epochs reunited and became bound together by great human ranges, intense volcanic activity marked the closure of a once great Paleozoic seas as the ancient continents of Laurasia and Baltic collided. For the first time, forests grew in the Earth's equatorial regions, and in the oceans it was the age of giant fish. The sun was slightly dimmer back then, the day shorter, the moon closer to the earth, and the sky, had there been anyone around to judge, a shade bluer. It was a period of natural global warming, and everywhere was balmy and plentiful. Life of all kinds thrived in the warm seas, but the peace of this shoreline concealed a time of great change. The first animals to colonize the land were those that could not easily dry out, such as those encased in bony shields like sea scorpions. Free from predators and the hazards of the water, they grew up to 2 meters in size, fearsome, unopposed creatures strode in semi-barren lands. Somehow it seemed that the planet was experimenting with life, and in a sense waiting for something. Wow, I've never looked at it like that. And the way the Earth was like experimenting with life. Damn. I gotta read philosophy more. I need to get a philosophy book. The night sky was also different. There were more bright stars because the sun was in a more crowded part of the galaxy than it is today. It was traversing the rich star fields of a galactic spiral arm. At night, some of the stars were partially obscured by streams of gas that traced out colored lagoons of light crossed by black tangled tracks of interstellar dust. Life had already won control of Earth after a struggle, the outcome of which was inevitable. Already certain as soon as the primitive Earth had begun cooling, it is the nature of life to change and its ability to adapt as constant as the stars, the galaxies, and the vast darkness in between. One day a creature from the sea appeared at the edge of the water, its eyes poking above the waves, shifting from side to side, taking to the strange nature of the new place. Soon the sunlight of its membranous skin was harsh and uncomfortable, so it dipped back beneath the soothing waves and moved offshore to find its pack. The tide, more frequent and powerful than those today, quickly washed away its tiny footprints. In a few moments, at its head and above the water, something stirred within the creature. Some impulse it was unaware, but that it was within it and also beyond it. It was an impulse that it had not yet been seen on planet Earth, but yet had been in existence since perhaps before the universe was born. Will there always be new land, new territories, new planets to explore in the unoccupied and beckoning expanses of the galaxy? This creature has reached the land had already begun to change. It wasn't the case that evolution improved its fins, turning them into the legs. The fins had already begun to walk. The fins had already begun to be walking limbs, while the creature was still using its gills in the sea. This is a process called pre-adaptation. As a result of this, expected evolutionary pathways become available, allowing further changes. In fact, most creatures originally evolved to carry out different functions from those that they eventually performed. Those early limbs, with 8 or more digits, evolved into the familiar 5 fingers, knees, and elbows we have today, but it could have been different. The same goes for the face, with the nose above the mouth. Curiously, our imagining of aliens often feature knees and elbows and recognizable faces, indicating that their origin would have been like ours. They say that evolution involves long periods of time, but they are wrong. Its chief requirement is death, not time. In an instant, those eyes became something more. Sea creatures had looked back at the land before, but this time, the creature that came back had a look that had never been seen on the earth before. Someday, humans would call it desire. When these small events were happening in the tropics of Earth during the Devonian geological epoch, the galaxy was already old. Countless ages and stars had been born, gone through their life cycles, and perished in bangs and whimpers and floods of radiation and matter. Planets had been raised in their midst, growing from rubble piles. Some formed into worlds of rock and ice, and some into worlds of gas, and they were either cast into space or destroyed by a dying star. I'm gonna move this to the side. Life had arisen countless times and, in many cases, perished without record or trace. But perhaps by some arbitrary law and chance and luck, some life had developed intelligence, and some eventually became starfaring. And on those, a few star hopped across the Milky Way, and in time much less the age of the galaxy. As we shall see, in the galaxy's time frame, life could have blossomed in one part of it, and then, in a flash, be almost everywhere. Perhaps the single stars, doubles and triples, gas clouds, star clusters, and galactic spiral arms all saw space probes of various origins, and designed silently combed them, stopping off at each star after star to carry out a survey or replicate another probe that would be dispatched on its own mission to continue the quest begun millions of years under the light of a now forgotten and increasingly distant mother star and perhaps an extinct race. Was there, at the time on Earth, orbiting high above this primitive planet, something that watched the shorelines of the newly assembled continents of the Devonian Age? Did alien sensors record their first steps in the conquest of the land? Do those records still exist in some vast and ancient database held on some distant planet? Or stored in some seldom visited archive held along some silent corridors of light in a vast structure lying between the scattered stars? And I wonder, is that the data ever studied by alien scholars? Or is the conquest of the land on a nondescript planet of such little consequence, having been repeated so many times on so many worlds, that it was merely catalogued, cross-referenced, and ignored? Perhaps if humanity, or what if it is to become an almost unending millennia ahead, survives into a distant future to make contact with other civilizations, it will find those records, a survey of the Earth in the late Devonian geological era, and look for the first time with the meta-human eyes at the first land creatures swarming around tidal pools, marooned by ebb tide, their ancestors. God. Part of me, like, a big part of me wants to be there to see that so bad. Like, that would be breathtaking to look at the database of Earth in the Devonian period and, like, see photos or videos of the creatures of our ancestors. Like, wow. After much effort, with its skin crackling under the harsh sun and with its gills aching for the comfort of the sea, the creature dragged itself into the sand and fell, painting as the alien dryness scored its skin and reached for its gills. Perhaps it died there. Perhaps the others who followed it also died. But if you delve deeper into the alien archive, expand its time frame, and look at the highest resolution images, you will see that eventually a few of those creatures survived and colonized the land. Their fins and flippers became legs and arms, and their lineage became a new line of evolution that would one day after the face of the planet, producing creatures that would travel to the stars to meet other... their fins and flippers became legs and arms, and their lineage became a new line of evolution that would one day alter the face of the Earth, the planet, producing creatures that would travel to the stars to meet others with whom they shared a common birth, and others with whom they didn't. That meeting, the first contact between aliens, is not without risk. Contact between two perspectives of evolution begun under the light of different stars would seldom be easy, or equal, or would never be without danger. First contact is a risk most species go through. We will face it. Perhaps not for 1,000,000 years, perhaps tomorrow. None will emerge unchanged. Not all will survive. The Cosmic Cave. We scan the time and we scan the time scale and the mechanisms of life itself for portents and signs for the invisible. As the only shrinking mammals on the planet, perhaps the only animals on the entire sidereal universe, the burden of consciousness has grown heavy upon us. We watch the stars, but the signs are uncertain. We uncover the bones of the past and seek out our origins. There is a path there, but it appears to wander. The vagaries of the road may have a meaning, however, it is thus we torture ourselves. For real, bruh. Like, that's so real. There's a whole meaning out there, and yet we're fucking everything up. And I fucked my hair up too. For 1,000,000 years and a half, the Danabu was a mighty river. During the Ice Ages, it began bringing down an increasing amount of debris that started to fill the valley it had created. With the uplift of the Swabianjuri Mountains, it started to use a new routine some distance to the south. Consequently, today, the Blaublu, Schmeek, and Ak rivers use a valley which they never could have excavated. Modern humans use the upper Danube as an entry corridor into Europe as the Middle East during a temperate period just before an extremely cold climatic phase about 40,000 years ago. They did not find the land unoccupied. Perhaps the humans that were already there thought when the others came, they looked like themselves, but not quite. They did not know them. They were different in ways they did not quite understand. They copied some things from them, and the newcomers learned things in return, but nothing made them like the newcomers. They had things the new arrivals did not. It was agreed that it was better that they had arrived. They had survivors. It was better before they had arrived. They had survived the cold times, learned the hard way, but the newcomers were a different puzzling change. They had no words to comprehend them. They had a strangeness they had never seen before. In a way, the new ones were like a question answered differently. The recently, uh, the recently extinct species of human Neanderthals lived in what we call the remembered present northwestern Europe about 35,000 years ago. They lived in small groups and had a primitive language and had a culture more developed than many had given them credit for. They were not brute savages, and so slowly, their societies were changing. But not fast or far enough to cope with the new kind of change. They had been here for almost 200,000 years and had become a local habitant. Little altered from brief life to brief life. Nothing really changed except family, and few lived very long. Most suffered brutal deaths by predators or injury. They ritually buried their dead, but they did not think much of the past or the future. Their stories were primitive, and they could not organize themselves into large groups. They preferred family and village. They had their customs. They had longer term planning was beyond them. But longer term planning was beyond them. They were here now and in the landscape in their minds and remembered present. There must have been contact between two species of humans, but despite a major effort to identify archaeological evidence of interaction between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, we have yet to found many examples of the mingling of DNA. The new humans brought with them a new kind of society with cosmology and religion, and a sense of superiority when they were neither aliens nor invaders. But they might have been seen. The Swabian caves they lived in had produced the earliest record of figurative art and music, a cultural blossoming that around the time of the extinction of Neanderthals, perhaps that was an inevitable result of a small demographic imbalance that wiped them out about 30 generations or about 1,000 years. Neglect, competition, and interbreeding played a role, as did genocide, as some surmise. Whatever really happened, the relationship between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens was different from anything we can experience in the world today. It perhaps provided a lesson for alien encounters with more advanced species. There is one artifact that tells you all you need to know about modern humans, their fresh capabilities, and indeed their future. It is a sliver of carved mammoth tusk discovered in 1979 near ancient fireplace in a cave under a layer of bone ash and close to tools of other artwork. The hearth was later sealed by a ceiling collapse. There are notches on all of its edges, suggesting that it is complete and not part of a larger object. It looks like a man with a lion's head and arms and legs were outstretched. An imagined creature. Some have called it the Ordained. It could have been the oldest star chart we know of, at over 33,000 years old. It looks like the constellation we now call Orion, the Hunter. On one side, there remain tiny spots of manganese and Orc, and the group of notches suggests a time-related sequence. There are 88 notches, the number of days in which 3 new illuminations and the number of days Orion's permanent star Betelgeuse disappeared from view each year. Orion was visible for a 9-month period each year, which indicates that this could be used as a pregnancy calendar to ensure that a birth took place after a severe winter and time to build up reserves during the better months. Dang. The nature of the object's weathering suggests the piece may have been carried in a bag, something precious not to be left around, perhaps a tangible reminder of the conjoined cycles of cosmic power of human fertility. It was long time ago when the first humanoid looked up at the night sky in curiosity but about 50,000 years ago, something happened to humans, a blossoming of culture and capabilities, a new outlook, a new society. Stone tools started to become more specialized. into projectile points and blades. By 40,000 years ago, the change was unstoppable. The appearance of cave paintings, figurines, musical instruments, all product of a newfound imagination. We had become curious, super curious. It had become something of a cliche that in almost every film about the dawning of human consciousness, there is a group of early humans huddled around a fire, watching the sparks drift upward, directing their gaze to the stars beyond, to those other campfires in the sky. I don't think they needed anything to pull their gaze skywards at night. Some believe that our modern mind was forged partly in our relationship with the night sky, and that the connection began in caves. The cosmic cave, if you like. The stars and our attempts to extract meaning from them forced forward our thinking and curiosity. Consider the development of hand axes. They changed little for almost a million years, showing that our ancestors remained intellectually dormant, never experimenting or wanting more than they had. But about 40,000 years ago in the darkness, by the light of flickering torches in caves, and in a more organized way of hunting, something kindled human creativity. Our brain's prefrontal cortex was growing to accommodate the new connections we were making. Along came symbolic expression of the idea of the otherworldly, the abstract. As soon as humans painted the stars on the walls of our caves, our journey to them was inevitable. Damn. As soon as we started painting the stars on the caves, our journey to them was inevitable. I'm praying that we reach the stars, bro. Caves were not just places of safety for ancient humans, they were also their interface with the gods in the universe. Their walls were the edges of another existence. Caves were also a representation of the female reproductive tract and their type. Looks like 30 minutes is up. I'm at top of page 49. Yeah, I love this book. Yeah. Thank you guys. See you guys day 32.